On behalf of the 2021 Indigenous Conference Planning Committee, including UFCW Canada's Indigenous Subcommittee members, we welcome you to the space. My name is Emmanuel Lopez Bastos. My pronouns are she, her. We'll now start with the land acknowledgement, and we encourage you to also use your name, state your traditional territory on the chat. I join you from Toronto, Ontario, the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Since time immemorial, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and many other First Peoples. Participants are joining from diverse areas across Turtle Island, so we acknowledge those nations too. UFCW, commonly known as the Food Workers Union. As such, we recognize that Indigenous people are the first and rightful landholders of Turtle Island and the first to embrace the sustainable relationship to the food system we contribute to and benefit from today. We affirm that worker justice is synonymous with Indigenous justice. Today marks our 5th conference and our largest to date. It's been envisioned by subcommittee members across Turtle Island, and today you've accepted the invitation to a very personal affair. Our keynote speaker, Stephanie Harp, will speak truth to power. You'll learn some history about the jig dance and learn some steps too. We'll have a conversation with MPP in front of the UFCW, the Honorable Wab Kinu. We'll have a lesson in Ojibwe language and take part in a workshop to incorporate traditional medicines in our activism and self-care. To start, we'll hear from UFCW Canada's resident elder, Eric Flett, our national president, Paul Meinema. You'll see me on and off as we go through the conference along with Zeni Maceda, who will moderate the chat function, Q&A function throughout. But before we do that, we invite you to join us in a moment of silence in the memory of the 215 children who lost their lives while attending the Kamloops Indian Residential School and whose deaths went unreported, whose graves went unmarked, and for whom we seek justice alongside Indigenous communities. Please join us. Miigwech, thank you so much. Now to start us off, we are grateful that retired UFCW Local 1006A Indigenous Subcommittee member, Lorraine Anderson, will lead us into our first segment of this conference with the traditional gathering song. Lorraine and her family members join us from unceded Algonquin territory. Please watch the following video. Thank you so much for listening to the beautiful traditional song, traditional gathering song, and thank you, Lorraine, for making that happen. Lorraine has always taught us that the drum is the heartbeat, and the heartbeat sets the rhythm for walking our path in a good way. Miigwech. Now, for a special conference traditional opening by recently appointed UFCW Canada resident elder Eric Flett. Eric resides in Treaty 1 territory and Métis homeland. He is a proud UFCW Local 832 retiree with a 26-year history of ceremony. We are honored that Eric has accepted the invitation to be UFCW Canada's resident elder. Please find Eric's longer bio in the chat. Over to you, Eric.
Miigwech. Bonjour. Kiwi BJ Wawa Tendis Nikas. Uzai Zay Makondo Dem. Gaga Gwek Jiung Dunji. Gijimanindu, Gwajiminan, Giwi Jiu Shinam Nongum. Shigo Ndikitai. Kichimi Gwech, Hakaneo Ya, Uma Bijat Nongum. My spirit name comes with the Northern Lights, and I belong to the Brown Bear Clan of the Ojibwe people of Ebb and Flow First Nation, Treaty 2 territory. I was born there, but today I reside on Treaty 1 territory, traditional lands of the Ojibwe, the Cree, the Dene, the Dakota, and the homelands of the Métis people. And I ask Creator to watch over us today for all that we're doing, all the hard work that we do, and the good work that we do. In honor of these children that were found, these 215 that were found in Kamloops, there's been a lot of emotion over the last few days, and traditionally what we would do, we have certain protocols to follow when someone passes, someone leaves this world and goes to the spirit world. So what we would do is we would have a traditional 4-day fire and a sacred fire 4 days and 4 nights. And in that fire, the eastern doorway of that fire is where the spirit enters. And during those 4 days and 4 nights, that spirit travels here on Mother Earth and visits all their relatives. And then on the last day, they leave through the west doorway and return to the spirit world. So in honor of that, I'd like to welcome you. If you have a candle, please light a candle. And this candle will act as a secondary sacred fire for all those spirits of those young ones. In our traditional teachings, our creation story, Gijimanidu, and that's how we say God in my language, Gijimanidu created us from Mother Earth. Gijimanidu took a piece of Mother Earth from each of the 4 directions and put it into the Miga shell, and with one breath gave the first breath of life to the first human being. And so then, as our elders teach us, there has to be balance in everything, balance in Mother Nature. And part of that balance is when we are created, we are taken from somewhere. So our spirit comes from the spirit world, and our body comes from Mother Earth, and they come together to create a human being. So then the opposite end of that is when we leave this world in that balance, our spirit goes back to the spirit world, and our bodies need to go back into Mother Earth. But then we need to do exactly this, is have a 4-day fire and for that, and that's why we're lighting that candle for those spirits, because all those young ones never had the opportunity to have proper protocol when they left Mother Earth. I'd like to do a song for you, for those in honor of the children. This is a traveling song that was given to me in the sweat lodge and ceremony quite a few years ago, and it's honoring their spirit so that they have a safe journey back to the spirit world. Way ya hey da, way ya, way ya hey da, way hey da, way ya hey da, way hey da, ya way hey da, ya way hey da. Yahweh, 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 ho. Way, Yahweh, way, ya, hey da, way, hey da, ya, way ya, hey da, way, hey da, ya, way, hey da, ya, way, hey da, ya, Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Wait a, wait a, wait a, yeah. Wait a, wait a, wait a, yeah. Wait a, wait a, wait a, Yahweh. Wait a, Yahweh. Wait a, Yahweh, Yahweh. Yahweh, 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 Yahweh. Wait a, wait a, wait a, yeah. Wait a, wait a, wait a, yeah. Way ya, hey da, way da, ya way, way da, ya way, way da, ya way, ya way, ya way, ya way, ya way, ya way. Oh, mi witch. I I just like to say miigwech for that introduction, Emma. Thank you. Um, it's been there's been a lot of emotion over the last week since we heard of the children being found, their bodies being found, and that's just one school across the whole country. There's 186 residential schools and day schools, so there's so many more out there that are yet to be found, to yet to have a proper burial to be called home. Um, to me, uh, doing this work, like I was honored when I was approached, asked to be the resident elder for the national. I was honored. I sat on the committee and the subcommittee for a few years, and I really enjoyed doing that work. It was good work we were doing. I'm honored by the work that our union does for truth and reconciliation. To me, they're always at the forefront in our battle. And but there needs to be more done. And I was talking with Emma about this earlier. Uh, Perfect time to bring up the point that one of the 94 calls to action is for the Pope to make a public apology for the things that happen in residential school. He was approached before and he refused it. And truth and reconciliation is going to take a long time if people don't want to hear our truth. I've had quite a few people tell me sorry, and that's my truth. We have stories upon stories that do nothing. We have a closet full of stories. Like, we don't need stories. We need people to hear what we're going through. We need people to hear how we need our healing done. And that's the support that Indigenous people need. And for me, it's always about what this conference is named for, grounding our spirit. We need to get back to our culture. So many of my people don't follow their spirituality. And it's got a huge part to play in our everyday lives and how we're all connected. In a Like as I was saying earlier in our creation stories, our bodies were created originally from Mother Earth. That is our connection to Mother Earth and all the animals in, on, and above Mother Earth. And so we need to get back to Mother Earth, get back to nature, to ground your spirit. The most important thing I feel Mother Nature gives us, Mother Earth gives us, is water, that life-giving water. And all the medicines that she gives us that we can add to that water to help heal our bodies, right? It makes our spirit live in a good way. And that's originally why we were brought here, to bring love and kindness to Mother Earth and everything therein. And that's our role, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth. And Mother Earth is speaking back to us on how she's feeling, how she's hurt. We look at this virus that has affected the whole world. Mother Earth is telling us that she's sore, she's tired, she needs help. And that's what this virus is. It's a spiritual thing. The virus has a life, right? And that's what we need. Go back to our traditional ways, and get those medicines, those traditional medicines, to help heal the people. And over the last few days, all the emotions that's coming out, not just from Indigenous people, it's from all four races of man. Everybody is affected by what they have heard. I've heard these stories from when I was a child, and there needs to be more understanding about it. And that's why I love doing this work with our union. Our union is always so willing and capable to push and lobby the CLC, lobby the government, like to bring forth our children. Our children are so denied in health, education. There's so much wrongdoings, and finding these 215 children, it's just one aspect of it. There's so much intergenerational trauma that has happened over the years since contact, but residential schools, 60 school, child and family services. There's just been so much wrong happening to our people from day one. When the non-Indigenous people arrived here, they took our land, they took our lives, they took our spirituality, they took our language, they tried to take our identity. And the last thing they took was our children when they went to residential schools. And we had no say whatsoever in there. And some people, it doesn't shock me still that some people have never heard of residential schools. So to me, it says, you know what, people need to hear, and we need to advocate for our people. We need to bring that to the forefront in mainstream society, that our people need help. But one thing it does tell me on a positive side is, you know what, our people are very resilient. Our people are strong. We've lived through all these injustices and hardships, and we've managed to survive. And a lot of it has to do with our humor. But to me, that spirituality, our 7 teachings, our medicine wheel, our 7 clan system, this is what grounds our spirit, and this is what helps our spirit to heal. And without taking too much time, I hope, I say gichimi igwech, miigwech akane andinawe maganaduk. Miigwech, thank you to all my relations. Thank you everyone for listening to me. I'm honored to be here. I feel like I want to stop right there because I could talk for an hour if I was allowed. But I know Paul likes time. Paul's good on time. So yeah, just give me the old. And with that, I will say, Miigwech. Thank you everybody for listening. Miigwech ki bizendawiak. All my relations. Oh, matagi was. Oh.
Eric, thank you so much, Miigwech, for that beautiful opening. Eric will also close the conference later on. Now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing UFCW Canada National President Paul Meinema. Paul is the reason we're here today, folks. Paul, your commitment to inclusion has remained steadfast in all equity areas. But in Vancouver, back in 2016, when UFCW Local 401 Subcommittee member Ron Klassen whispered in your ear that we should start a national conversation with Indigenous UFCW members, you made a commitment then to not only do that, but to take the lead from our Indigenous subcommittee in strengthening allyship as a union and in solidarity with UFCW Indigenous members. And for this, we thank you, Paul. We thank you. Please join me in welcoming President Meinema.
Thank you, Emma. And bonjour, hello, Ani. I'm speaking to you today from the traditional homeland of the Métis people, Treaty 6 territory. And Eric, I never tire of listening to you and your openings. I am so honored on behalf of UFCW that you accepted our request to be our resident alder. Your teachings to us are so relevant and so important. And on a personal level, I am proud to call you my friend, and that you have taught me many, many things since our time that we've known one another. So Megwich, my friend, Megwich. I would like to start by thanking and congratulating the Indigenous Subcommittee, all of the members who I've had the opportunity to talk to earlier this morning, for your commitment to this conference. And to Zenny and Emma and our National Human Rights, Equity, and Diversity Department for holding this wonderful event, and for creating an opportunity to talk about connections between labor activism and traditional forms of healing and self-care. It's a discussion that deserves our careful attention. And I will not be able to talk as eloquently about this as Eric has. But I don't think that we can have this meaningful discussion today without all of us in our own ways, keeping in mind the 215 families that are thinking about their relatives, what has occurred. With a full understanding of this tragedy, we know is far bigger than what was discovered. Some of these children died. According to Mr. Sinclair yesterday, some of these children were killed. It's a shameful stain on Canada's history. Those of us who have the opportunity to speak with federal and provincial leaders have an obligation. And the obligation is that we must tell them directly, the politicians, that no one needs another apology, no one needs another study, no one needs another court case. No Indigenous person needs to be brought to court to talk about what their rights were and what their compensation was for the abuse they had. And certainly we need no more excuses. There is money that has been set aside by this federal government to ensure that we find the unmarked graves that exist. And it's time that the federal government release that money so that work can be done. And for those of us who have the opportunity to speak in the Catholic Church or the religious other institutions, it is time now. It was time before, but it's time now for the apology. It is time now for the resources to be given and the records to be turned over to our Indigenous community so they can find closure on this terrible stain of their history, and they should take responsibility for their role. So as Emma did at the beginning, take a moment's silence. I ask all of us to keep in mind, using Eric's traditional candle in the spirit world, but all of us in our own cultural way to remember the families that were impacted by this horrible event. We are now over a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, with many workers still living and working through regional lockdowns and rising cases of infections. UFCW members and all frontline workers continue to provide the food and care and services that all people need to meet their day-to-day needs, while putting themselves at risk. At the same time, some of our members are worried about their job security during this unprecedented time. And it is with good reason, as many companies and corporations have laid off thousands of workers. As well, we have existing barriers of structural racism that have paved the way for Indigenous and Black workers and other people of color to bear the brunt of the economic and social impacts of COVID-19. And yet, despite these challenges, a number of communities have found creative ways to push through the hardship. And our union, UFCW, has been relentless in voicing the needs and concerns of workers and their families throughout this pandemic. No matter how many times that we have received pushback from politicians and employers, UFCW Canada has persisted by calling for paid sick days, better health and safety protections, and access to stronger benefits and public support. We've made significant progress on several of these demands, and we carry on in our fight for fairness because we know that the union is the key vehicle in making sure that workers' voices are heard, not only in the workplace, but in the halls of power. But the truth is that this work can also bring feelings of exhaustion and burnout, which is one reason why this conversation about self-care and healing is so important, especially when we consider that many of the people who have been forced to deal with the unequal consequences of COVID-19 are those who come from historically marginalized communities. So if we're going to talk about the fight for justice and improving the lives of all workers, we must also talk about taking care of ourselves. To this end, UFCW Canada's commitment to build meaningful relationships with Indigenous peoples on the shop floor and beyond remains a priority for our union. It is impossible to fight for the rights of working people without ensuring that the struggle for justice for Indigenous people is a part of our everyday activism. And to help support our work on this front, UFCW continually seeks the guidance from our Indigenous subcommittee. This guidance is so important because we know it is informed by Indigenous members who care passionately about the union, Indigenous identity, and advancing reconciliation and truth in all social justice. Since June is Indigenous History Month, I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge the rich and diverse histories and traditions that form Indigenous culture across Turtle Island, and recognizes the immeasurable contributions that Indigenous people have made to this land. Today we're meeting virtually. It's a major departure from the last time that we came together to attend the National Indigenous Conference in Toronto. But I'm happy to report that despite this change in circumstances, we have lobbied multiple times on Indigenous rights since the last conference. We know that speaking up is a powerful tool because the personal narrative and storytelling are as much about advocacy as they are about relating to one another. And today is an opportunity to further delve into the situation, into the pillars that inform our reconciliation. As a part of this virtual conference, we will hear from a diverse range of speakers and listen to the reflection from members of the National Council Indigenous Subcommittee. This conference is intended for us to build on our collective strength as activists, as members of our communities. I want to thank you all for the critical work that you're doing of building and sustaining Indigenous rights and advocacy. It is my sincere pleasure to see each of you on this call, and I hope that you enjoy this conference, not as much as our personal ones, because we can go back and do them again, but enjoy this conference. Neglich.